All right. All right, so we're going to be going through the Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 themes that I built for BYU, and how you set up theme settings, pass along variables from those theme settings, use them in templates, and make changes on your page based on all that. Oh, I think I'm just going to click through here. All right, so we do have our themes up on Drupal.org. So you can see that. It's called BYU_theme. And this is how you guys can go browse through the code later if you want to. And also some links for the BYU theme components, which includes the header and footer. If you guys aren't aware, those are web components that we built. We built web components so that we can have the same code used in Drupal, WordPress, Joomla, HTML, custom, whatever you're using, you can use web components. So we're using web components because they can be maintained in one place and used across campus, and they're great. So Drupal 7 configuration, the goals things we're going to walk through is, you create an interface for your theme settings, have those settings change elements in the header, footer, and general pages, have the theme implement the new BYU header components, and including customization options that those header and footer have. And then set this up so it works with sub-theming and multi-sites. And that's what we accomplished. So important files we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at theme settings. I know that's not named very clearly, but that's where you define your theme settings. And when I started, I copied the theme settings file from the base parent theme. For Drupal 7, that was Zerb Foundation, and in Drupal 8, we did Bootstrap. So, so in Drupal 7, it looks like this. It's got the theme name and then the classic hook function names. And you can see we've got field sets and specific settings here. There are a lot of settings, so we'll be going through some of those today. And then we've got our template.php in Drupal 7. And in your template.php is where you have a lot of custom functions. And I provided the variables from the theme settings back to the templates. Thanks. All right. So let me pull up a website where we have these configurations. Oh, where do I have this? Oh, I'm blanking. Where have I used this on Drupal 7? Okay, so first I'll just show you how the theme settings look in implementation. So the base themes are foundation. Already established a lot of this structure with these field sets. And then I just came in and added new ones. BYU font and colors, header settings, general, and footer. So you can see I've got field sets here, and then there's also field sets here. And you'll notice that defining settings in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 are really similar. And it's pretty straightforward. You can almost always find an example in already in the theme settings or somewhere else. So, okay, what I just was showing you here, this field set was our BYU fonts and colors. So that was that section on the side. And then inside Zerb Foundation and fonts, then I have this select field here, which selects the font package. And you can see that here. So basically, I set this up so these are our paid fonts. they're going to be choosing one of these all the time, but they also have the option to load some Google fonts as well. We also provided a lot of options here for customizing their headings without having to sub-theme and do it themselves. We just gave them some default options and started with that. So I'll just walk you through the different types of fields we have. Obviously, select, checkbox. We've got text fields. This one is very interesting. This is a fun one. These are actually all the versions that we have in the CDN to date for the theme components. It was important when we were developing this to allow developers to be able to customize to what level their website be updated automatically. And some people we knew would want to select something that had no automatic updates because they'd well over their website. We subscribe to 1.x.x, and if you guys are familiar with Semper versioning, this means that there will be no breaking changes, but there will be bug fixes and feature enhancements. So we recommend that because it's great. Bug fixes are automatically updated, within 15 minutes of when they're fixed in the code. It's really great. But we did need to give all this flexibility to our users. So we'll walk through how I went and got all these versions, and this automatically updates, right? And then put that into a theme setting. We had a lot of options built into the header and footer here that we needed to provide an interface for so that people didn't have to go into their template page template and code it themselves. We wanted to keep people in the interface as much as possible just to make things easy. So they can click and say enable the subtitle. And spell it right, yeah. You can make it italicized. You can put it above the main title, like Department of Engineering, if you wanted. So there was a lot of settings we needed to have in here. Custom login URLs and logout URLs, depending on what modules they're using for sign-in. Similar settings for the search. Menu settings. Some people would want to disable the menu bar. Some people would want to make it transparent and have a hero image behind the menu, right? So we have a lot of these settings. And also, if you guys want to watch a video just about all of these settings in implementation, it always does this when it's on HTML. I already put together a video that walks through all about using this. So we've got our installation here on theme settings. I've got, what is this, like 20 minutes? I just walk through basically every setting and show you how it works. So if you guys just want to know more what the settings are and all the combinations there, you can watch that later too, and I'll add a link to my slides for that. But basically, I want to talk about how set up these settings and make them all work. Any questions so far?
It might be important to point out that Katria did all this work because the majority of development on campus is provided by people who are not developers. So,
yes.
For example, I'm a Windows Systems admin who mentioned I'd be interested in learning Drupal, and now I'm in charge of some websites that are built in Drupal. And so that's what she deals with on a daily basis, is people like me who really aren't coders or not developers, but they're now tasked with maintaining a website. And so she's done stuff like this so that I can pick this up and make these tweaks without having to go into the template files and other files and make those tweaks manually, which is really nice. And I know Dave right here manages the websites for Nebo. And I don't know, that might be useful to you to be able to add template settings so that your end users could have some more ability to make tweaks, but then keep it within the setting that you're doing.
Yeah. And one discussion we've had a lot is we want to make it easy for people to customize, but we don't want them to like start putting like pink in their headers or crazy things like that. So having a few style options built in helps them because it saves them time, like you said, and they don't have to go into the code, and And they've got some nice looking options to work with. Yeah, so this is great. And it's really not very hard to get this going. So we'll go through all the steps, and you guys should feel pretty comfortable that like you could try doing this yourselves and get it working in a short amount of time. So let's see. All right. Okay, so then we come to our template file. This is our page template, and this is where in Drupal 7 I implemented everything from the theme settings. So you can see, yeah, I've included the BYU header. You can see there's some logic here about the settings. So step 1, we define the theme settings, and in theme settings, super clear. So field sets, select options, checkboxes, text boxes, I've shown you all of that. The most complicated one was providing that option select list for all the versions in the CDN. Now you can go and view what is in the CDN at any time. We're going to cdn.byu.edu/manifest.json. So what I did was I told my code to come out here and look for BYU theme components and look for all the versions that it has available. And I'll show you the code for that. So here in theme settings, okay, font stuff, we've got all our fonts here. And let's do components here. Okay, so here I've got my URL. I go and get my JSON. I look for, oh, this used to be what it was called was 2017 core components. Now it's just BYU theme components because it became more official. And okay, so then basically I go through and I get an array of all the values. And then I check if it's experimental because we also want to know, here, I'll show you in the option again. So we've got latest, defaults, we've got our different versions, subscribe to all minor changes, bug fixes only, and no automatic updates. Not everyone's familiar with this versioning system, so I also needed to look at the format of that version and see what kind of label I should put on the end to help people understand. So back to this one. This one? Yeah. So then, then we checked if it includes that. Then it's subscribing to all minor changes, bug fixes only, etc. So I append that little label to help people understand. And then we take this option list. We define the select list here. And then instead of defining the options in a short array format like we have on some other fields, we just reference that, that array right there. And that's giving the key, which is the actual version ID, like 1.x.x. I want to define the variables from the settings and pass them along to the templates so that we can use them conveniently. All right, so we'll go ahead and look at how we've done that. There's a number of different ways that I've brought the variables in. You can see here this font package setting. I check what the value is and then add whichever font CSS we need to include conditionally. That's not passing a variable in to the templates, that's just loading the CSS. We did the same thing here for some of these Google fonts. If that was true, then we would load it. So, and then here, this is where we are taking that custom components version and adding the CSS and JavaScript for it. So this version is the key value, so 1.3.0 or latest or master. And then I'm conditionally loading that. And then if for some reason the setting was not set, then we just load the default latest. Does anyone have any questions about this part so far? Okay. We also defined the body classes. And oh yeah, and then I fetched from all of our font settings about what color we wanted H2s and what font we wanted H1s. All of those settings I just accomplished with changing the body classes based on those settings. So here we've got, if this is set, go ahead and add. So for instance, font 5, H5 dash the name of the font that we want implemented. So if we go to this website and we inspect, up on the body you'll see these H1 navy, H2 navy, and then so we've got our colors. Oh yeah, and we've got our fonts right here. H1 Vitesse, H2 Vitesse, H4 Gotham. So basically, I just quickly provided that font name along with whatever we wanted it applied to. So just adding those classes changes the styling. Very straightforward and simple to accomplish that way. So just adding that class into the classes array. You want to make sure that you're not setting the classes array equal to something and removing everything else that's already in that array, right? Because many things are going to be adding classes into that array. Let's see. Okay, there's other variables. There's other variables that I just wanted to make available to the templates. And this is primarily the variables that I needed for the header configuration. Like, are we using a subtitle? Are we making the header sticky to top? Are we a lot of configuration that was built into the web components that I don't want you guys to have to go into the template and change yourselves. So I'm checking the theme setting called subtitle above and checking if it's true or not. And here in the variables, we're defining, this is the variables array, right? And this is what's going to be available to our templates. So when I define the subtitle use equals the one that we got from the theme setting, now it will be available for the template to use. Does that make sense so far? Okay. Then we come to the actual template file. Let's do this. Oh, whoops, that's the Drupal 8 version. All right, so step 3 is implementing this into the templates then. Oops. Oh, dang. Yeah, it keeps taking me to the Drupal 8 one, and I want to view the Drupal 7 one. Okay, so we'll go to, should be 7. Okay, good. We go to templates. Okay, now we should see the page template. Okay, good. All right, so I've got my BOU header, and then I'm checking, if my full width setting is set to true, then print the attribute full width. And that's already built into the header component itself to know, oh, if I have the attribute full width, then change myself to be full width. If subtitle use is true, and then if it's above, print out the subtitle, then do the title. If the subtitle is supposed to be true but not above, then print it there. It's fairly basic logic, but basically all of these variables that I defined are now available, and I can use them however I need to in here. So I've just conditionally gone in and decided, okay, what do we need to print out? Classes here, conditionally adding things or not. If we have BYU menu disabled, then we skip that section, right? It's fairly straightforward logic, but it includes printing out the variables, conditionally deciding whether or not to print HTML or not. So it's not very difficult to do this, and you can accomplish a very convenient interface for people using your theme. So okay, now anyone have any questions Drupal 7 wise before I go into Drupal 8? Okay. All right, so Drupal 8. Drupal 8 was very similar in a lot of ways. The theme settings was extremely similar. Yeah, it was extremely similar. We don't even need to go through. The formatting is basically the same. And then we've got our, in Drupal 8, you have a .theme file instead of the template PHP file. And that's where we have any variables passed along and custom functions. So for instance, in here, let's see. Yeah, okay, so yeah, we'll keep going through this. Let me also talk about libraries. I'm guessing probably not all of you have tried out libraries in Drupal 8 yet, but basically this is your main approach for adding JavaScript or CSS in Drupal 8. In Drupal 7, we had that Drupal add CSS, Drupal add JavaScript function, and it was super easy that way. This is also super easy, but the nice thing about this is that you can conditionally load your resources. So it is really great that way. So basically, in your module or your theme, you'll have a .libraries.yaml file. And here I've defined a lot of them. So we've got our fonts basic, fonts full, right? We had those two packages. Here's the Libre Baskerville. So instead of doing that one line of add Libre Baskerville CSS, I've got it defined with information, and then I say this is where it's located. It's external. It's minified. And then I will load this library. I'll show you that part. We've also got components latest defined, components master, components 1.xx. So we've defined a few component versions, but I wasn't able to do the same automatically building the components options in Drupal 8 because I wasn't able to find a way to conditionally build different libraries based on different things. Drupal 8 wants you to build these, define these libraries before you use them, and I couldn't find a way to conditionally generate them. And I didn't know if we really wanted to fill up this file with tons and tons and tons of those. So we've basically done our main ones that we recommend, or the main ones for testing. And then if people want to stick to a certain version, then they should be able to just change the one, define it themselves with copying a little snippet here and pasting it in. So if they want to stay in a certain version, we're assuming that they kind of know what they're doing, and they should be able to go and add that into their theme. We've also added in, we've got some other options, Font Awesome, Source Sans, and some additional styles here. BYU buttons, tables, and box shadows. So let's see if I have a Drupal 8 site that we could look at this. Honestly, the interface is extremely similar. Let's see. All right, so we talked about libraries. Yeah, that's how all of those are defined now. Yep. Okay. So first, step one now is defining those libraries, that file I just showed you guys. Then setting up theme settings, extremely similar to Drupal 7. All right, then we set up our templates. Now the templates in Drupal 8 are a bit different because they're twig templates instead of just plain plain HTML, PHP templates that we had before. So first, I'll just show you guys Twig. So Drupal 8 is using Twig version 2. So I'll add this link to my slides as well. But there's very thorough documentation about how to use filters, how to do functions and operations in Twig. It's basically just a new formatting way of doing things. And it does save some time. You have to kind of get used to it a little, but it's really helpful. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our header. So you'll see all these brackets in here. This is a Twig thing. So bracket and % is a conditional line. If there's just, you can see there's a comment there. Double brackets wrapping something means just printing out that variable. And those are the basics of it. So it's a new format basically, but we're saying, okay, now if our full width variable is true, then print out the word full width. And it doesn't have brackets around full width because it's not a variable, it's just the text full width, right? Whereas later on here, we say, okay, if subtitle above is true and use it is true, then print out subtitle text. And this is a variable saved from the theme settings, right? So again, it's very similar approach, just Twigified. It can take a little getting used to use Twig, but it's convenient. There's also different filters you can add onto your variables to format them differently, and that saves you time rather than writing the PHP to filter and format something. Let's see. So when we did Drupal 8, we split it out into page, header, and footer, and then the page template references the header and footer. We partly did that because we knew that it's very common for people to take the page template and override it. And we knew that if later there was a new heading setting built in, we would need to put that setting into this template file for the header. And if it was all bundled in one page template, then anyone that had already copied the page template out and overridden it wouldn't get that update. So we kind of broke it into pieces. So hopefully no one is overriding header and no one's overriding footer. They're only overriding the page template. You can see in here in the page template that, oh, did I not copy the right? Let's change this. Right here it says include BYU theme root. This is knowing where that theme is, and it finds the header Twig template right there. So basically inserts everything from that template in right there. So yeah, again, we did that just so that we know people will override the page template, and we didn't want them to override the header and footer so that they could still get the updates later. Alrighty. Does anyone have any questions so far about Twig or the differences so far between 7 and 8? Okay. Oh yeah, so I've got the link for the Twig documentation in here. There's a lot of cool things with the logic and operations. You can do filters where double brackets means you're printing out something, and then you've got your variable, and then you do a bar, and then the name of the filter. So I've used the strip tags one a few times. It just strips out the break tags and just gives you plain string. So we've got printing out variables, comments, filters. We also have, this is what it looks like if you're doing logic. If the user's variable is there, then start printing this out. We've got a for loop for user in users, loop through that array. So there's an array users, and you're looping through each one. Each entry in the array is the user, and then you're printing out the username from that user. And I don't know what the E filter is. Let's go look. So we'll go back to filters. Oh, whoops. Okay, documentation. We'll go to the filter section. Huh. Maybe it's a shortcut for escape. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's an HTML escaping strategy. Interesting. Yeah, so there are a lot of these filters. It's really convenient. Let's see, what else have we used? Trim, upper. I think that just makes it uppercase, right? Yeah. So it's convenient. You can quickly change your formatting and things, right? Just another way that Drupal 8's incorporated existing like libraries and approaches and platforms so that they're not reinventing the wheel. Twig exists outside of Drupal. For loops, again, kind of like we did on the last one, you can loop through the array of users and go through each one, or you could iterate a number of times for some cases. Oh yeah, we already talked about that. Okay, and that is all my slides for these configuration options. Does anyone want to ask any questions for theme configuration that they want to accomplish, they don't know how to? Anything else that you're trying to automate with your theme or make it easy for the people that maintain your website to just click and change things? I guess one thing we could go through more is how we attach the libraries. So here I went and got this is the component version that we talked about. And this line here is attaching the library. Remember in Drupal 8, we defined the library names already ahead of time. And then this is one way of attaching a library. There's a number of ways. Let's just look at that. I really like how Drupal 8's changed to defining libraries because there's so many ways you can conditionally load your library. Basically, it goes through basic format for defining a library. There's also even just telling it what assets to load first. A lot of properties you can place on it. Like you can conditionally load a script just for IE. A lot of options here. This is great. I've also looked into this pre-process one because sometimes people will say, oh, well, my JavaScript breaks as soon as we turn on aggregation and minifying stuff. And so I just turn my aggregation off. Well, you don't want to do that. You want to just tell it, don't pre-process that one resource if it has problems with that. Or don't minify. Or, oh, that one's already minified. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a... What?
Did you pass that note along to my
Yes, I told someone very recently about that.
Okay, because he was coming across that same problem. He turned off aggregation just so that the JavaScript runs correct.
Yes, I think he talked to me like last week or something about that.
Pre-process.
Yes, this is what I sent him. Whether the assets should be aggregated. Yeah, we had run into this in 1.2 with the components because when the components were aggregated, the components file would go and try to figure out the polyfill and load something. And when it was aggregated, it was looking in the wrong file because the aggregated copy was moved. So I think that's what we ended up having to do was get that to work and to say, don't pre-process just the components. They're already small, so they don't need to be aggregated too much, and that'll be fine. So that one is a very useful option. Especially if you can't control, like you're using an external library and you can't fix why it breaks when it's aggregated, then that's useful. You can also override and extend libraries if your parent theme uses a certain version of a library and you want to replace it with a different version instead of just loading both, right? That could be very useful for some cases. Okay, so there's a number of ways you can attach the library to say when to load it. It will not be loaded automatically unless you go in your theme and say load all the time, which you'll want to do for your, core theme files. But whenever you can conditionally load something, that's great because you're going to be speeding up your page. If you have a style sheet that's just for your homepage, just load it on your homepage. So for that case, I would say you're probably going to have a page dash dash front template. And inside that template, you can put a line like this. Attach library. This fluffiness would be your theme name. And then cuddly slider would be your library name. So it might be BYU theme / homepage homepage. And then that would define your CSS for just the front page. This is how you define and attach the library to all pages. So this is what you would do just for your base theming that you want on every single page. And then to a subset of pages, you can also write a function in your .theme file that evaluates some kind of setting or some option and then says go ahead and attach it. So this line is exactly what I did. Right. Let's see. It's one of these tabs in here. Right in here. So I said, okay, if this version equals this equals master, then attach master. So yeah. So really, this is really, really great because then you can say, well, for the same reason, if that theme setting is checked, then load that library. And that's exactly what we did also for loading like Font Awesome. Let's see. Yeah, Font Awesome used is true. Go ahead and attach the library, Font Awesome. Libre Baskerville, Source Sans. And then we also added these nice little settings in there. These are small little CSS snippets that we wrote that define some nice classes for buttons, nice classes for tables, box shadows. And all they have to do is just check a checkbox, and now they have that resource loaded. Now they can use that class on their site. And they don't have to do any styling themselves. Just add the class BYU-button on where they want their button, right? So this is a nice approach that we want to be doing a lot more of, building out lots of these small styles. People just simply enable them and then start using them on their site. So that's kind of our next approach that we really want to be doing with the theme next. So we're excited about doing that a lot more. Because then this is very modular. You load whatever you want, but you don't load a huge, overwhelming amount. Did you have a question?
You can document how they come out. Instruction
to using these specific ones or the themes?
checking the box, but how do they know what the class is?
Oh, yes, I see. So those styles are all in GitHub. So we've got theme components and then BYU theme style helpers. And these are the small CSS snippets that we're talking about. So we've got our general README here, but then they'd have to basically just go and look at the button CSS file and see, okay, this is the class that they're using. Now, that's a really good point that we want to make it easier to just browse and see, oh, okay, here's the button and here's the class you use for it. So what we've started doing is there's a really cool thing you can do with GitHub pages and use something called Jekyll and basically generate a mini website that's generated from your code. And then you have little demo files, and then you can see the code and what it looks like. So I'll show you an example of what we want to do for that. The theme components group got this put together so that there's this demo site here that automatically pulls code, and you've got your demo what it actually is and the code that you copied to use it, right? So basically we want to do the same thing with our big giant styles repo and just have a bunch of little styles and then little demo and class like that. So that is one of the next steps so that they don't have to just look at the file. Yeah, good question. Does anyone have any other questions? And also, like, we would love to have you guys come to the engineering meetings and say, I want styles for this, and collaborate with us, because we're just asking people what they want and trying to build them and collaborate on it. And we'd love for you guys to come and or to come and say, I have these nice styles that I already did. Can we share them? And we'll share them, right? So we would love more collaboration and everything. So, yeah. You guys have any other questions about theming in general? Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming.